Fight!
I'm now delighted to be joined for the next part of our Mortal Kombat franchise series. So far, we've been delighted to have Chris Casamassa, who played Scorpion, Keith Cook, who played Reptile and Sub-Zero, Musetta Van Der, who played Sindel, and Darren McBee, who played Montaro. And now we're delighted to be joined by the one and only Brian Thompson, who played the arch villain in the Mortal Kombat Annihilation, the one and only Shao Kahn. I suppose, Brian, the Mortal Kombat franchise, I suppose it's very much alumni, it's historical. I mean, 20 years on, it's still going as strong as ever. It's almost like James Bond. Once you're part of that franchise, you'll always be remembered for it. And it's something that looks like it'll run forever. The video games are the best sellers in the last 2 or 3 years. The fighting game it still reeks millions upon millions of copies and down sales each year. The comic franchise is running through the roof, and it's resulted, I suppose, in series popping up like Mortal Kombat Legacy that's led on for the 2 movies, Mortal Kombat Conquest, and we're now going to have a new Mortal Kombat again in the 21st century in 2021. So first of all, how delighted are you to be part of that Mortal Kombat universe?
Sorry, did you say the path of the Mortal Kombat universe?
How delighted are you to be a part of the Mortal Kombat universe?
Oh, that's a part.
Yeah.
A part of the Mortal Kombat universe. I'm delighted, you know. Have you ever seen a leprechaun? I'm just wondering. Part. That's funny. Delighted. Delight is the appropriate adjective, especially when they call you and say you got the job. That's when the door opens. You know, that's when you get put on the spaceship and get to go to that universe. When they say you got the job, that's one of the most delightful things about being an actor, is when, after, you know, in unmeasurable odds, you somehow once again get a really highly sought after part. That's a recipe for delight.
And you mentioned a highly sought after part. I suppose the original Mortal Kombat in 1995 had sort of rave reviews, and it was a blockbuster. And when you found out about Mortal Kombat Annihilation, had you seen the first Mortal Kombat movie? Had you done your research, or did you go in auditioning for the Shao Kahn part? And had you any sort of research or info, or how did the opportunity come about for you?
The initial interview was through my agent, and I remember there was quite a bit of material and recommendations about the character of Shao Kahn. There was artwork that I was given, a character description, and then of course you could play the game to see how Shao Kahn, how he fought, and some of the choice lines that he would have to say. And then the audition also entailed some martial arts. They had laid out some mats, and I had just completed my red belt. I was studying Hapkido at the time. And the stunt coordinator, I don't remember if it was the official stunt coordinator at the audition or not, but he asked me what I did, and without showing me a single move, we just talked about, we'll do a sit down round kick here. Let's do a high kick here. Let's do this combination. Let's do this hand move. So we just did a verbal combination.
Okay.
And then I did that without any visual demonstration.
Wow.
And so that showed a certain ability that you understand martial arts and you can speak the language.
Yeah, and I suppose, Brian, you mentioned martial arts, and I suppose Mortal Kombat, it has some legendary martial arts, no more than Robin Shao artists in it, and no more than Robin Shao, Chris Casamassa. I know you're predominantly an actor as such, so I suppose, did you feel a bit in awe of some of the martial artists that you came across on Mortal Kombat, in terms of that sort of environment and those sort of people that you were playing and fighting beside?
Yes, because they're on a different plane. They're on a different level. They've been doing it their whole lives. Their flexibility, their gymnastic ability, their acrobatic ability. I remember when we were in Thailand, and we're in Ayutthaya, and there's that scene where we're coming into the temple,
Yeah.
and there's all these martial artists in the background, people whose names we don't even know, doing all those flips and off of buildings and round kicks, the army scene when they're coming in.
Yeah.
And they're background artists, and their abilities are, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 100 times greater than my own. And they're doing it in the background, take after take after take. That was something that I was in awe of, that they threw themselves and their bodies into each take, and then after each take, just smiling and laughing.
Yeah, I suppose, Brian, your own character in the movie, I suppose you played the ultimate sort of arch villain. But I suppose for the Mortal Kombat fan base and the hardcore sort of Mortal Kombat fans and diehard fans, I suppose the scene, I know Lyndon Asby didn't agree terms to be involved in the second Mortal Kombat movie, but I suppose the killing of Johnny Cage at the start of right at the start of the movie, I'd say barely 3-4 minutes in, it sort of set a sort of usurped turn. It sort of shocked people, I say, more than anything. Wow, we didn't see this sort of coming, and it sort of had a mixed sort of reaction. It's best to say, the killing of Johnny Cage. And I suppose you played the script, you played the character, you're doing what you're told. And what was your general, obviously you probably, following the script, you probably didn't realize the influence of the Johnny Cage sort of character. Do you think that sort of worked against the success of the movie or worked for the movie?
That's a very difficult metric to measure.
Yeah.
How much affection was there for Johnny Cage? How much expectation was there for the people watching Mortal Kombat to get to have more time with Johnny Cage? So I can't speak specifically to whether that was a great decision or a mediocre decision. That's you're kind of talking about art, right? About and what people like and what people dislike. So did it help? Was it shock? It certainly was shocking, and it certainly did help you want to see Shao Kahn get his demise, get his due. That's part of the reason we love watching action adventure movies, is you get to see the guys who deserve to get their due get it.
Yeah. And I suppose, Brian, in terms of the movie, the cast and the set and the location and the sort of special effects, it was set in this sort of fantasy world, this sort of outworld. And what was the actual the location and the shots? Was it made up sort of sets, or how was this outworld sort of thing projected? Was there an awful lot of digitalized art and sort of visual sort of effects in relation to some of the scenes where the fights took place?
Well, let me clarify. You asked about Outworld, is that correct?
Yeah.
And you asked about where the fight scenes took place.
Yeah.
Those are two completely different locations. The fight scene, the big fight scene at the end was at the temples in Ayutthaya, Thailand.
Okay.
And then the other location was we were on sound stages in Thailand, but it was a rice warehouse.
Okay.
And it was over 100 degrees outside, and they couldn't get the warehouse air conditioned. And it was the hardest set I've ever had to work on. John Leonetti, bless his heart, he took all of the actors into the set and said, well, it's going to be a little warm in there. I kid you not, at one point, somebody measured 140 degrees.
Wow.
140 Fahrenheit.
Wow.
So you can do your conversion to Celsius. It's freaking hot. It was so hot because they had, in Outworld, you remember they had flames, right?
Yeah.
So we're in a rice warehouse with a tin roof that doesn't have insulation. We got the sun turning that tin roof easily to 130, 140 degrees. Then inside we've got, I don't know how to measure the BTUs, all those fire troughs that were turned on, they turned those on.
Yeah.
It was so hot in there, the statues that were made out of green foam started to melt and sag.
Wow.
They literally just started to lean forward. They were afraid they might lose them. So I much preferred working outside at the temple where the fight with Robin was versus that Outworld set. And oh boy, I've never been so sick and had to work at the same time. I got some type of infection in my stomach, where you can't hold food down. And I had lost at least 20 pounds by the end of the movie. I don't know if you put side by side the guy that was working in the Outworld and the guy that started the movie, one was about 20 pounds thinner.
And I suppose, Brian, in terms of the movie as well, in Mortal Kombat Annihilation, we saw so many characters in terms of involved in the second movie. So many characters, so many sort of different fight scenes, and there was so many sort of different angles, but you were prominent throughout. And what was your sort of being involved in most scenes, most takes, and did you sort of get a sort of a love for the Mortal Kombat sort of franchise after competing, after taking part in Mortal Kombat Annihilation? Did you become a fan? Were you a fan from the first day you took foot on stage, in terms of the first day of shooting, or what was your reaction to the first time you saw the movie play back to you, the sort of the first live finished production of Mortal Kombat Annihilation?
To go on the joyride of a movie, it's really hard to do that when you've been involved with it.
Okay.
There's too many memories with the locations and the costumes and what happened in the shooting. It's really hard. The movies I've enjoyed the most are movies that I wasn't participating in.
Okay.
Like the joyous ride of watching Brother, Where Art Thou? Movies I had no association with whatsoever. Fargo. Those are. I'm a trained actor, and my thrill is in seeing characters developed, and like Fran McDormand in Fargo. He's fleeing the interview. So that's your accomplice in the chipper. Those are the movies that have sent me to the moon, that I've just delighted in. Movies that are constructed for fighting.
Yeah.
Mano a mano. Those, that is a fantasy that every person is involved. You can't be a human being without wondering what it's like to have to fight for your life. Thank God I've never had to, or been in a situation that was even close to that. I've walked away from every person that ever took a swing at me.
And I suppose, Brian, it's a sort of a fantasy sort of world with a sort of human sort of feel to it, Mortal Kombat. And I suppose in terms of that, is that why the franchise has been so successful, that it combines the human aspect, the mortality aspect, then with the sort of bit of the fantasy sort of powers and sort of what I say, the sort of the Chinese sort of background history in terms of martial arts stuff to it, like, as well. But you also have the special effects, the special powers, the fire, the ice, the sort of wind, the sort of rain, the sort of elements that make up Mortal Kombat. And I suppose is it very important that the movie is success, that it never lost its sort of human feel or its human touch to it.
Those are the parts of the movie that I enjoy the most, the human elements, the human struggle, what we as human beings in everyday life can identify with. And that philosophy, it is a dichotomous polarity between, peaceful philosophy, especially where we were in Thailand, there was such a heavy Buddhist feel, and there is that peaceful Buddhist, characters and people that want to make peace, and then they're put in these situations where they can't, where they have to resort to this physical interaction that is terrifying. So I think I will agree with you that those are the elements that allow this franchise to have legs.
And I suppose, Brian, heading into the 21st century, we are seeing a new Mortal Kombat movie come to base. The trailers are out for it all over the internet at the moment. It's going to be released in January early next year in America. And obviously then it's going to obviously go worldwide and overseas, I suppose, in the following months. I suppose for you, being a part of the Mortal Kombat sort of franchise, as I say it, if the opportunity ever came about for you in the upcoming movie to play a sort of cameo role, would that be, I mentioned that question to Chris, I mentioned to Keith, and they said they'd jump on that ship straight away. They wouldn't have to be asked twice. What would be your reaction to that?
Sure, get me a ticket.
Get you a ticket.
Be on that trip. Absolutely.
And did you have fun?
As you said that, for some reason I flashed on Christopher Lambert from the original Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
And that's the, for me, that's the part I would like to play. I would like to be Christopher Lambert's part.
Raiden.
Yeah, and not have to be the guy that wants to please his dad and rule the universe. I don't want to rule the universe. That's an awful job.
And I suppose, Brian, in terms of Mortal Kombat, I suppose the franchise is still going very strong. 20 years on, it's probably one of the most successful fighting games of all time. Millions of copies sold worldwide, a new sort of fan base growing all the time in terms of new kids, 15, 16-year-olds, all buying the sort of new Mortal Kombat games that are out all across every sort of console worldwide. Why do you think Mortal Kombat has such an appeal to sort of a young sort of audience? Do you think it's that sort of gore, that sort of violence, the terms of that sort of fantasy world, the appeal that's got to it, and that it's probably has adult themes running through it rather than sort of a childish sort of comedy sort of prank to it?
So your question is, one of the elements that appeal to the new younger generation.
Yeah, of Mortal Kombat. Why do you think the franchise is still going strong? Do you think it's in relation to that sort of violence, that sort of gore, the sort of adult sort of themes to it that has appealed, that is capturing a new audience even to this day, that has meant there's such a demand for a new movie?
Well, young adolescent men are always in a struggle with, testing their mettle. How do they compare with the other young bucks around them? And this game, this movie, this storyline is a way for these young souls to kind of test their mettle, even if it's fantasy. And I think as these younger people develop their own moral fiber, their own moral philosophy, fight or flight, I think playing with these fantasies helps them move forward into the adult realm, where you have to make these decisions, and hopefully they choose the more peaceful road.
And I suppose, Brian, for the last 30 seconds now, just in relation to Mortal Kombat, how much fun and enjoyment had you in relation to playing Shao Kahn? And is it still one of your favorite parts in what has been an illustrious career for you?
Without exception, it is one of the favorite parts that I've ever played. For his larger than life character, and then personally, because we got to be in 5 different countries, locations that I don't know that I ever would have traveled to. Petra in Jordan, that is one of the 7 wonders of the world. And then to spend so much time in Thailand amongst these peaceful Buddhist people. So Brian Thompson, the person, loved the experience of making the movie.
On that note, Brian Thompson, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you this evening as we talk about the Mortal Kombat franchise. You played the historic arch-villain role of Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and as you said, no doubt the producers of the new movie will be on the phone to you in the coming months for that cameo role, Brian, and we look forward, I no doubt, to see you, and that's a thumbs up if anyone's watching in relation to the new producers. Brian is definitely in anyway. So Brian Thompson, pleasure talking to you today, and stay safe in this troublesome world. Take care, Brian.
And be safe as well.